Brian Gill here from Gill's Primitive Archery. Today we're working on going to put tip overlays on our bow. Now tip overlays are not always necessary, but they do add some aesthetic appeal, and they do add some strength to your tip as well. So follow along. I'm going to show you how I do it. But now one of the things I would recommend is that you do have a belt sander, whether it's a tabletop like this or a handheld one, which I have both, and I use both of them for two different jobs, as you'll see. But these are going to give you good, true flat spots. Doing this particular step with hand tools, as much as I love to build bows with hand tools, the working limb is the important part with hand tools. Using the belt sander is going to give you really true glue lines that you can clamp together, and it's going to give you a really nice finish in the end. So if you're serious about doing tip overlays, get you a belt sander. The tabletop is not, you can do them both with the handheld. You can flip the handheld upside down, hold it, and use it just like the tabletop. But I have both. Obviously I do a lot of these, so it makes sense that I have this stuff. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of shape these out. You'll see real quick, it's nice and easy. Just kind of shape them by hand. We're going to flat spot them a little bit. Once this gets up and going, you won't be able to hear me talk anyway. But then we're going to switch the belts over. This is a really coarse one, like a, I don't know, a 50 or an 80 grit or so, and then I got a 120 grit we're going to throw on, and just to kind of clean it up a little bit. Okay, so what you can see here is, you know, we flat spot at the bottom of this, and then I round the front side. This will be the part that's actually in the bow. Like the bow limb will be here. This will be the tip coming out. I don't shape this side yet. The reason we shape this is it's very hard to shape this once it's glued onto the bow. So we taper this down and basically just bevel it right into it. And we'll take just a little bit of sandpaper and clean it up just a tiny bit. There's like a little bit of a wood burr right on there. We want to take that off, and of course do all the finish work on this part pretty much right now, because once you glue it on, like I said, you're going to be hard pressed to shape this or do a whole lot of finish work without running and dishing out your bow a little bit. So like I said, just work on the taper, get this part done, taper it into the sides. Once you start getting into the sides, it can be blocky. It's not a big deal from there. So let's move on to the next part, and we'll start flat spotting the tip of the bow to be able to glue this piece on. Alright, this is the part that takes a little bit of practice. I use a handheld belt sander, and what we're going to do is just flat spot the back of this. It's okay if it tapers into this. We're not going to be able to go perfectly flat because we'll run into the curve that we put in. So it's going to angle just a little bit, and so essentially we're going to just lay this belt sander on top of this like this. I know it's hard to see, but you're going to get the gist of it here pretty quick. You just got to be careful you don't lean one side or the other while you're doing this. Just be careful what you're doing. Keep it as still as you can, because the idea here again is to create a flat spot for the tip overlay to adhere to. Okay, so you can see now how we got this flat spot. You can see it angles in just a tiny little bit, and here's our tip overlay. And when we lay this on, it's important to notice that it sits really flat, and it's got a great line all the way around. Okay, so now we're ready to glue this side on. Alright, so we're almost ready to glue it on. I take my little paring knife. I like to use a paring knife for a lot of things. And what I'm going to do is on the bottom side, the part that's going to be glued, I just carve in very randomly a crosshatch pattern. And the idea is this gives more surface area and more bite to glue the tip overlay on. I don't know if you'll be able to see that or not. I think you can a little bit. So I do it to this, and then approximately where it's going to be. Now you don't want to stretch down into the bow, so just make sure it's kind of right in the middle. But we're going to do the same thing here. Now what we did is we left it rough from the about 120 grit sandpaper from the belt sander. Left it rough because it's with the grain, so it's going to be easier to scrape this later and sand it and clean it up. So we left that because it's going to help our glue stick a little bit better. So now we'll take a Titebond 3. It's a nice waterproof wood glue, and I put a little drop on here. Now you don't want to smear it all over the place because you don't want it to squeeze out around the tip any more than necessary. And then we're going to do the same thing though, because anywhere that this glue gets on, you're going to have to scrape it or sand it off, or else it's going to look like a blemish in your finish work. So what we're going to do is rub this in really good, get it in all those cracks. A little bit of excess on there is okay, not a whole lot, just a tiny bit. Okay, then we'll lay it on here and give it a good little squeeze. Okay, and then line it up. Wipe it clear, as clean as you can with your finger, and get it pretty clean, about like that. So again, you want this centerpiece. If you do, you can do a flat one if you want to bevel that in. However you want to do it, doesn't matter. But the idea is just make sure it's a good flat line. And then I take a spring clamp, clamp it in place. We'll do the other one and we'll let it dry for a couple hours, and then we'll be ready to go ahead and shape these tips out the rest of the way. Alright, glue's dry. Now I just use the handheld and pretty much completely rough sculpt the tips into the shape that I'm looking for. Once you get the basic shape that you're looking for, then I use a chainsaw file to cut in my string grooves. I just kind of roll it up and down till I get, when I look down here and I say that's too low, roll it up, that's too high, and then just go until I find that sweet spot that looks right to me. Doesn't have to be scientific. And go ahead and just file those in. Now one thing to make mention of is to not go all the way through your overlay. If you cut all the way through it to where you're down to the Osage, then when you string it up, you're probably going to pop this bottom part of it off. So you have to leave a little bit of wood in there to keep it all together. But you can get it pretty darn thin. And then once I get the back side cut, then I go ahead and start rounding it over into the sides a little bit. Then I can angle it back a little bit. So of course this is the belly side of the bow, this is the back side. And I like to go about as deep as the chainsaw file is thick. So again, I do it like this, I just kind of keep rounding it right in. And then you'll have your completed tip overlay, and all you have to do is sand it up and finish your bow out, and it's ready to go. As always, your viewership is very important to us. That's what makes all this happen. So please like and follow Gil's Primitive Archery on Facebook, and of course subscribe to our YouTube channel. The links to both are listed in the description. Thank you.